Good afternoon, all of you. Today we are moving to the next lesson, that is electromagnetic induction. So, you have studied electricity, then you have studied magnetism, and in this chapter, in the previous chapter, you have seen that a current carrying conductor, when kept in magnetic field, it experiences force as well as torque. So today in this chapter we will start to study the reverse phenomenon is also possible. Okay, in the last lesson, a current carrying conductor when kept in magnetic field experiences force and torque. But now the reverse phenomenon of this statement is what we are going to discuss in this chapter. That is, if we rotate the conductor in a magnetic field or if we move the conductor in a magnetic field, then the current will flow in it. Understood? So that is what we are discussing in this chapter. Here we have to study a few laws, then some rules and some devices also. It's a very important chapter, so listen carefully. Okay, so before moving to the main things, we have to discuss a term which is very important, that is magnetic flux. Magnetic flux. You have studied electric flux in first chapter. So here we are discussing magnetic flux. Magnetic flux through any surface which is placed in a magnetic field can be defined as the total number of magnetic lines of force crossing this surface normally. Okay, so it is the total number of magnetic lines of force crossing a surface normally. Understood? When you are placing a particular conductor or something in the region of magnetic field. Understood? Now, magnetic flux is a scalar quantity. It can be denoted as phi. Okay, phi, or it can be phi b. In the first lesson you have written it as phi e. Here it is phi b. Okay, magnetic flux is a scalar quantity. That is, suppose if this is the surface I am considering here, having an area A, and a few lines of force are passing through this area like this. Okay, like this. If lines of force are passing through this area, normally we can write the expression for magnetic flux. Okay, so for taking the expression of magnetic flux, you can denote it as, suppose this is the magnetic field line which is passing through the surface normally. Okay, it is B, and if this field B is making an angle theta with the normal drawn to the area, you all know the area vector, isn't it? You have studied that area vector. Suppose this is the area vector N. Okay, so between this N and B, it makes an angle theta. Clear? So if the field B makes an angle theta with the normal drawn to the area A, then the component of the field normal to this area, will be, what is that component? It will be B cos theta. Clear for you? As this N is the area vector which is perpendicular to this, isn't it? Again B, which is making an angle theta with this N, and the component of B which is perpendicular to this N is actually, here it is B cos theta. This B will have two components, they are B cos theta and B sin theta. So here the perpendicular component with this N is B cos theta. So we will take this B cos theta into that area. Clear for you? The component of the field normal to this area can be will be B cos theta, and so the expression for this flux phi is equal to B cos theta into A, or you can write it as B dot A. Okay, B dot A. Clear? So once again, magnetic flux means it is the total number of magnetic lines of force crossing a surface normally. Clear? It is measured as the product of the component of the magnetic field normal to the surface and then the surface area. Clear? Now this expression is phi is equal to B dot A. That is BA cos theta. Clear? So this is magnetic flux and this is needed throughout the chapter. We need this term, that is why I told it now. Now we are moving to the main topic, that is electromagnetic induction. Electromagnetic induction. Already I told that this magnetic flux is a scalar quantity. Now what about this unit of magnetic flux? How can you write the unit of magnetic flux? As it is Tesla meter square. Tesla meter square. It is the unit. Tesla is the unit of magnetic field and for area it is meter square. Together we can call this Tesla meter square as Weber. Okay, W-E-B-E-R, Weber. So 1 Weber is actually 1 Tesla meter square. 1 Weber. Weber is the unit of magnetic flux. 1 Weber is equal to 1 Tesla meter square. Clear? So dimension also you can find for magnetic flux. You know the dimensions for magnetic field as well as the area. So you can directly find the dimension, and the dimension for flux is M L squared A raised to minus 1 T raised to minus 2. M L squared A raised to minus 1 T raised to minus 2. Clear? So now we will move to electromagnetic induction. So you have studied a little bit of electromagnetic induction in class 10. And here we are discussing this topic in detail. Okay. So from various experiments you understood the fact that electricity and magnetism are closely connected. You know that. That is in the early part of 19th century and all, you have studied the Oersted experiment. In that experiment, or Ampere conducted some experiment, Oersted conducted some experiment. From that is clear that moving charges produce a magnetic field. Okay, moving charges produce magnetic field, or current is able to produce a magnetic field. The reverse effect or the converse effect is also true. That is, moving magnets can also produce electric currents. Understood? That is, you have studied moving charges. Moving charges in the sense current. When charge moves, current produces. So moving charges, that is currents, are able to produce what? Magnetic field. That you have studied from Oersted experiment. Now the same thing, conversely you can say that moving magnets can produce electric current. Understood? Moving magnets can produce electric current. So actually this fact was discovered mainly by Michael Faraday through his various experiments are there. Okay, Faraday's experiments are also a part of your syllabus. So Faraday conducted so many experiments and finally come to this conclusion, and he discovered that currents can be produced in a loop of wire if a magnet is suddenly moved towards the loop or away from the loop. Okay, so while moving this particular magnet, what is actually happening there? You know that if this is a magnet, it consists of number of lines of force, isn't it? Okay, so when you move, there is a, as if I have considered a particular area, in this area the lines of force will pass through it. If you are moving the magnet like this, the lines of force will pass through it. There is a change, no? Change in the flux. The lines of force crossing a surface is known as flux. When you are moving a magnet, there is change produced in the magnetic flux. So such a change, it is very necessary that there should be a change in the magnetic flux so that it will produce what? It will produce current. Clear for you? When you are moving a magnet, the lines of force will tend to move. They are also moving. That means there is a change in the lines of force or the number of lines of force crossing a surface. Sometimes it will be more. When you move it back, it will be less. So there is a change, and that change in the magnetic flux results in the production of current. So that is what discovered from various experiments by the famous scientist Michael Faraday, then Joseph Henry. So many scientists worked on that, and finally we come to famous laws of Faraday. So before moving to these laws, we have to discuss each experiment in detail. So simply you can define this electromagnetic induction as the phenomenon of, it is the phenomenon of production of induced EMF. Okay, induced EMF, and if EMF is there, surely current is there. Hence induced current due to change in the magnetic flux. Linked with a closed circuit. Clear? So this is the definition for electromagnetic induction. That is the phenomenon of production of induced EMF and hence induced current due to the change in magnetic flux linked with a closed circuit. Clear? Now we will check each experiment in detail and then we will move to the conclusion part. Okay? So next our topic is Faraday's experiment. So the phenomenon of electromagnetic induction was discovered and understood on the basis of a few experiments conducted by Faraday and Henry. Okay, so the first experiment is induced EMF. First one, induced EMF with a stationary coil and moving magnet. With a stationary coil and moving magnet. Okay, so you need a coil, then a moving magnet, or a magnet is simply a bar magnet, and then galvanometer is also needed to check whether current is produced or not. Okay, so first of all we'll draw the coil which is connected to a galvanometer. This is the galvanometer. Okay, this is the coil. Okay, now a bar magnet is placed here. A bar magnet is placed here. Okay, so it has two poles, as you know, north pole and south pole. Here I have placed the north pole near to this coil. Is much clear? So this is a circular coil of thick insulated copper wire. It is connected to a sensitive galvanometer. Then a strong bar magnet is placed near to the coil. In the heading itself you can see the coil is stationary. We are not moving the coil. It is stationary, but we are moving the magnet. Okay, shall we start? Okay. So first of all, the north pole of the strong bar magnet is moved towards the coil. Understood? That is, this part I am moving like this towards the coil. In this direction I am moving the coil. Okay. So you can see, suddenly you can see a deflection in the galvanometer. When you are moving the magnet with its north pole towards the coil, a deflection is shown by the galvanometer. Okay. Suppose you can consider the deflection is to the right. You know, galvanometer, you know, here it will be 0. And towards this side, right side and left side, the needle can move. So suppose you consider that when you move this north towards the magnet, the deflection is towards the right. Okay, this is the first case. Now, secondly, you are moving this magnet back or away from the coil. At that time, the galvanometer shows a deflection in the opposite direction. That means, firstly it was towards right, then second time when you moved the magnet away from the coil, it shows a deflection towards the left. Okay, deflection towards the left. The same experiment can be repeated by bringing the south pole of the magnet towards or away from the coil. So in both cases you can see a deflection in the galvanometer. When you are moving towards the coil, there is a deflection on one side, and when you are moving back, there is a deflection on the other side. Now if the magnet is kept stationary, that is without any movement, there is no deflection in the galvanometer. Understood? Clear for you? Now how can you explain this? Why galvanometer shows a deflection when the magnet is moved? Why it doesn't show any deflection when it is kept stationary? So for this explanation you can give it like, when a bar magnet is placed near a coil, you know, from this bar magnet a number of lines of force pass through it, isn't it? Since it is north pole, you know the magnetic field lines will start from where? It starts from north and end towards south. So in this way the magnetic field lines are moving. So this is the direction of magnetic field lines. As the magnet is moved closer to the coil, the total number of magnetic lines of force, what we call as the magnetic flux, okay, linked with this coil increases. Am I right? Then when it increases, what will happen? An induced EMF is generated. Induced EMF is generated, and as a result, induced current is generated. Okay. As the magnet is moved away from the coil, again the magnetic flux linked with the coil decreases. That means there is a change in the magnetic flux. So again an induced EMF, an induced current is set up in the coil in the opposite direction. As soon as the relative motion between the magnet and the coil stops, the magnetic flux linked with the coil stops changing, and so the induced current through the coil becomes 0. Clear? So the explanations are clear for you. Why it shows a deflection here? Because when you are moving the magnet towards the coil or when you are moving away from the coil, there is always a change in the magnetic flux. So this change is resulting in the production of an induced EMF, thereby an induced current. The word is important, induced. Okay. And it is for a very short while, and when you are stopping this particular magnet or when you are not moving this magnet, you can see that the galvanometer shows null deflection, which means that the pointer is towards 0. Clear for you? So this is the first explanation given for the experiment. Now the second cases, that is the second experiment he conducted, is that to generate the induced EMF with a stationary magnet. Here the magnet is kept stationary, okay, with a stationary magnet, and moving coil. Clear? Induced EMF with a stationary magnet and a moving coil. For conducting the second experiment, again he took a bar magnet. Okay. Bar magnet having a north pole and south pole. Then he placed a coil near to it. With its ends connected to a galvanometer. Okay, so from this magnet, you know, the feed lines will start to move. Clear? What here we are doing is, in the previous experiment we moved the magnet, but here we are moving the coil itself. Understood? We are moving the coil, and once it was moved, you can see the deflection on one side of the galvanometer. Then when you move away, the coil moved away from the stationary magnet, it is seen to the other side of the galvanometer. Deflection is on the other side of the galvanometer. Then when it is kept stationary, there is no deflection in the galvanometer. When you are increasing the speed, okay, that is the speed is increased. When the faster the motion between the magnet and the coil, you can see the current increases. That means the induced EMF increases, as a result induced current increases. Understood? So from this experiment, again he concluded that either we can move a magnet or you can move a coil placed in a magnetic field. You can generate some sort of current, which we call as the induced current. If you are not moving, if you are keeping it stationary, it is showing null deflection, which means that only this induced current is produced when there is change in the magnetic flux. That's very important. Okay, change in the magnetic flux. Clear for you? Then he moved to the third experiment, and the third experiment is actually, it needs two coils. Okay, so the third experiment is induced EMF by varying or changing current in the neighboring coil. Okay, in the neighboring coil. That is the third experiment. So for this third experiment, you can take a cylindrical support like this, a cylindrical support on which you can wind two coils. Okay, so let this be the first coil. Clear? You can name it as A. Then the second coil here, you can name it as B. Now this particular coil A can be called as the primary coil, and it is connected to a battery, a key and a rheostat. Okay, battery is there, key is there and a rheostat. This is the primary coil A. The secondary coil is connected to a galvanometer in order to note whether there is any amount of current produced. So these are the setups for the third type of experiment. Induced EMF by varying current in the neighboring coil. You need two coils on a cylindrical support. The first coil we call as the primary coil, which is connected to battery, key and a rheostat. The second coil you can call it as the secondary coil, which is connected to a sensitive galvanometer. Okay. Now here you can see a key. We can call it as the tapping key. When this tapping key is pressed, you can see a momentary deflection. The word is important. The momentary, which exists for a very short moment. Momentary deflection in the galvanometer. That is when you are tapping, when you are switching it on. Understood? Then when you are releasing the key, it again shows a momentary deflection in the opposite direction. Understood? So by switching on and switching off, you can see a very small momentary deflection in the galvanometer. Once in right means the second case in the left. Clear? That is the first observation. Then suppose if you are keeping the key pressed in it, that is the tapping key is kept pressed, steady current flows through the primary coil and the galvanometer shows no deflection. It does not show any deflection. Understood? That is when you are pressing the key here for a short period of time, surely current will flow through this coil, primary coil. But the galvanometer is not showing any deflection, which indicates that no induced current is produced in this coil. Clear? That is the second observation. Third is, as the current in the primary coil is increased, you can increase. How? By using rheostat. So by using rheostat, when you are increasing the amount of current passing through the primary coil, the induced current flows in the secondary in the same direction as that at the make of the primary circuit. Understood? As the current in the primary coil is decreased, the induced current flows in the same direction as that at the break of the primary circuit. Clear? The deflections in the galvanometer become larger if you are using a cylindrical support made of iron and all, huge material. Okay. So what is the explanation here? That means you have noted so many observations like momentary deflection in two cases, then no deflection. So what happens on increasing and decreasing the current in the primary coil? So these things, how can you explain? So listen to the explanation. Okay. So when a current flows through a coil, you know, it creates a magnetic field that you have studied from a Oersted experiment. That is, a current is able to produce, a current carrying conductor is able to produce magnetic field. So here when a current flows through a coil, a magnetic field gets associated with it. Now as the primary coil is closed, the current through it increases from 0 to a steady value, certain steady value, isn't it? So suddenly the magnetic flux linked with the primary and hence with the secondary also increases. Got it? Once again, when a current flows through a coil, a magnetic field is produced, because you know here we are not using any sort of magnets. We are only using two coils, isn't it? So in the first primary coil, when you are supplying current by pressing the key, current flows. So when you press the key, the currents, it increases, no, from 0 to a steady value, it suddenly increases, which creates a change in the magnetic flux associated with it. And if there is a change in the magnetic flux, suddenly the magnetic flux linked with the secondary also increases. That is why when you press the key, suddenly you can see a momentary deflection, which shows that an induced current in the secondary coil is set up there. Okay. Now as the primary circuit is broken, the current decreases from steady to 0. Isn't it? So again the magnetic flux through the secondary coil decreases. So what will happen? The induced current is set up in the secondary coil but in the opposite direction. When a steady current flows through the primary coil, the magnetic flux linked with the primary coil does not change and no current is induced. Okay. So only at the time when you are pressing the key or when you are changing, no? If a steady current flows means there is no change here. Only when you are making any sort of change, or by either by increasing or by decreasing or by switching it on or by switching it off, at that time only you can see a deflection in the galvanometer. If a steady current flows, means it doesn't cause any change in the magnetic flux, thereby no change in the galvanometer also. Understood? So these are the observations. Now from these experiments you can conclude, you can write two statements. Okay, that's the statement that Faraday derived after conducting the experiment. The first one is, whenever the magnetic flux linked with a closed circuit changes, then an induced EMF and hence an induced current is set up on it. Okay, this is the first point. Whenever the magnetic flux linked with a closed circuit changes, an induced EMF and hence an induced current is set up on it. Clear? Now the second point is, the higher the rate of change of magnetic flux linked with the closed circuit, the greater is the induced EMF or current that you have seen. The higher the rate of change of magnetic flux linked with the closed circuit, the greater is the induced EMF or current. Clear for you? So from these observations and conclusions, the great laws of electromagnetic induction. Okay, that is Faraday's laws of electromagnetic induction was introduced, and you have to study it properly. So we are moving to Faraday's laws of electromagnetic induction, EMI. Okay, electromagnetic induction. So first law, there are two laws in Faraday's laws of EMI. The first one is, listen carefully, whenever the magnetic flux linked with a closed circuit changes, okay, an EMF and hence a current is induced in it. Okay, once again, whenever the magnetic flux linked with a closed circuit changes, that is very important. Okay, the change, only if there is the change in magnetic flux, this phenomena occurs, and EMF and hence a current is induced in it, and it lasts, that is, this current lasts only so long as the change in flux is taking place. Okay, this phenomenon is called electromagnetic induction. This phenomenon is known as electromagnetic induction. Clear? This is the first statement. Study it properly. Now the second law is, listen, the magnitude of the induced EMF, is equal to the rate of change of magnetic flux flux linked with the closed circuit. Okay, the magnitude of the induced EMF. Listen, magnitude of the induced EMF. That is, you can write like this. This is induced EMF. If you are taking this modulus, means it is the magnitude. So the magnitude of induced EMF is actually equal to what? The rate of change of, with respect to time. Okay, rate of change of the magnetic flux. So if magnetic flux increases, the induced EMF also increases. If induced EMF increases, induced current increases. Understood? So this is the second Faraday law. Now here you have to study one more law. It gives the direction of induced EMF. Very, very important. Okay, based on that so many numericals are asked. So that is the Lenz's law. Lenz's law. So Faraday's laws consist of two parts. Okay. Then the second is Lenz's law, which gives the direction of the induced EMF. So this law states that the direction of induced EMF is such that the direction, you can note down the laws, okay, the direction of induced EMF or current is such that it opposes the cause which produces it. The direction of induced current, in this particular statement it only gives the magnitude of induced EMF or magnitude of induced current. Lenz's law gives the direction of induced current. What about the direction? How is the direction? As the direction of induced current is such that it opposes the cause which produces it. What is that cause? Our induced current produce cheyan karanamayadarano. Ayala endenu oppose cheyunu. That is Lenz's law. So who is the cause, or what is the cause of this induced current? Yes, it is the change in magnetic flux. So that causes change in magnetic flux, which means that the direction is always how? As it is opposite. That is, here you can write this value for the induced EMF along with direction and magnitude. You can write it is minus d phi by dt. Why? Because the direction of induced current or induced EMF is such that it opposes the change in magnetic flux, or it opposes the cause which produces it. Here the cause is change in magnetic flux. So you can say that E or EMF is equal to minus d phi by dt. Understood? Minus d phi by dt. So this is actually the mathematical expression for Lenz's law. Clear for you? Lenz's law gives the direction of induced current. Then Faraday's law, it states the definition of EMI and also the magnitude of induced current, which is given by E is equal to d phi by dt. Direction is specified in Lenz's law. So you can write E is equal to minus d phi by dt. Negative sign indicates that the direction of induced EMF is such that it opposes the change in magnetic flux. Understood? Now if a coil has n number of turns, large number of turns which can be represented as n, the induced EMF, how can you write? As you can multiply it with that number of turns. So minus n into d phi by dt. Understood? Minus n into d phi by dt. Clear for you? So these are the laws of electromagnetic induction. So if you are asked to define or state the laws of electromagnetic induction, these three you can write. That means Faraday's law and Lenz's law. Faraday's law consists of two statements along with Lenz's law. Now simply if it is asked like Lenz's law or Faraday's law, you can specifically write it. Okay. So with this I am winding up the class today. Be thorough with this topic, then only you will understand the next classes. Okay. So thank you.